So welcome everybody to our Mindful Healthcare Collective session on mindful minimalism. And I think almost all of you know me, but for those of you who don't, I am Jessie Mahoney, and I am a pediatrician and also a mindful coach and also a yoga instructor. And you can join me for yoga this weekend if you wish. And I do a lot of coaching on essentially, I call it mindful coaching, and it's living a mindful life or living an intentional life. And I focus on people who are, I like to call them successful on the surface, but struggling underneath, which includes almost everybody, and certainly all physicians. And I do a lot of work on relationships and career, but also on this idea of emotional and physical baggage or stuff and clutter. And I am what I like, a minimalist, not a perfect minimalist. And it doesn't mean I don't have any stuff, but very conscious about what stuff I have and getting rid of stuff and really working hard these days to not refill the stuff. And one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight in particular is a lot of us do a great job of clearing it out and then we just refill it all back in. And so why do we do that? And what does all this stuff mean? So my background is I went to UCSF for medical school and I practiced peds for 20 years at Kaiser. And I've done a lot of work in physician wellness. And I actually really believe that minimalism and mindfulness are an integral piece of wellness and health and living a satisfied, calm, content life. So I believe this is all part of that. And I have 3 kids, thus I do have stuff, 3 boy, teen, young adults now, and a husband and a dog. So I come to this not as someone who has managed to get rid of everything, but sort of an aspiring minimalist and really believing in the principles. And the coaching aspect of it is that what's in your mind and in your life is reflected in your house and in your office and in where you are. And they really mirror one another. And so by getting rid of stuff, you can help clear your mind. And by clearing your mind, you can help get rid of stuff and change the trajectory of where you're going and how you want to live. So I always like to start with some mindfulness and some intention. And so if you all could sit comfortably wherever you are and ground your hips into your seat and grow your spine out of your pelvis towards the sky and reach your head up tall. And focus just for a moment on your breathing. And allow yourself to settle and land here.
Yes.
Perhaps in the midst of all your stuff. And for this moment, just not notice it. And I wanted to offer a reading. I'm just going to figure out who is not muted yet. Okay, hopefully I got everyone muted now. So begin by just lengthening your inhale through your nose and lengthening your exhale with intention.
Another neighbor, Tim Engelhardt, took us with him to see if his home was still there. With landmarks gone, the neighborhood unrecognizable.
A friend of ours had a house here.
And can any of you who aren't muted, mute yourself? I'm trying to run through and get everyone muted, but if you can help me out, that would be wonderful. Thank you. And just focus on the breath for a moment, focusing on one thing. Part of minimalism is the focus and the attention, eliminating the distractions so that there's clarity and peace and just less in the way. And I wanted to read something from one of my favorite books, which is by Mark Nepo. It's called The Book of Awakening. Having the life you want by being present to the life you have. And this offering is called Off the Merry-Go-Round. No amount of thinking can stop thinking. Overthinking is an annoying reflex of being human. Often, in overanalyzing a problem or replaying what to say or what to do, I feel like a cow shooing a fly that will never go away. We all do this. No one is exempt. Feeling insecure, I can endlessly repeat the things that should make me feel solid about myself, and all the while my esteem keeps unraveling. What is there to do? I'm reminded of Einstein's insight that the manner of thinking that creates a problem cannot be the means by which to solve it. In simple terms, when spinning out, the only thing to do, hard as it seems, is to get off the mental merry-go-round. This is truly the terrain of faith, jumping into the risk to stop in mid-thought, believing that some deeper knowing will wash over us. In truth, no amount of thinking about yourself will give you confidence, just as no amount of thinking the sun will warm you, just as no amount of thinking about love will hold you. Confidence and love and the light of the world wait below all the labors of our mind. And I think that that is also true about stuff. No amount of stuff will make you feel abundant. And no amount of stuff can change how you feel. So if you can bring your left hand to your heart and your right hand to your belly, and just notice your chest rise and fall. And allow yourself to be open to the thought of what might life be like with less stuff, less activity, with conscious decision making, deciding with intention what's important. Could you let go of all of the noise and distraction and focus on what you truly need, both physically and emotionally? And allow yourself compassion for wherever you might be starting and the journey and the process to get to wherever you might like to be. Slowly lower your hands to your thighs and open your eyes and allow the light to come back in. And anyone who wants to show their video, feel free. It's nice to get to see who else is here, and I'd love to have folks participate if you want. So by way of introduction, I just wanted to talk a little bit about why I think mindfulness and minimalism are related. And minimalism is a state of mind. So as I mentioned, it's knowing what you need and letting go of everything else, the noise, the distraction, physical, emotional, the stuff. Mindfulness is also a state of mind. And it's this idea of awareness, intention, attention, and also non-judgment, which comes up a lot in sort of living a minimalist lifestyle. And so mindful minimalism is this idea of living a conscious life with intention, deciding what you need and what you don't need, and deciding what's important and what you're going to keep in your life. So it's a process that's very personal and individual. It's not about how much stuff you have, but about deciding what you want to have and having things that serve you, whether they're thoughts or things. And so this idea of slowing down and being present and getting rid of all the excess, the stuff that gets in the way, consuming less and enjoying more, so that everything you have is useful and fulfilling. And all of the thoughts that you have are useful and serve you and are valuable. And removing all the noise, the distractions, the drama, the weight of judgment, the weight of not enoughness, the weight of perfectionism. And all of that ties into the minimalism notion. And really, you can't have one without the other. And much of what we do in terms of stuff and collecting stuff and buffering stuff is done to try to address those feelings. So I like to say that your house and your life are a direct reflection of what's in your mind. And so I invite you to just look around, and it's a little bit of a insight into your brain. And so if you're overwhelmed or stressed out, generally your life, your relationships, your surroundings can reflect that. Excuse me. And if you live unconsciously, your life tends to be filled with stuff that you don't use. So just noticing and being very conscious about the stuff that you surround yourself with, and realizing that it's a reflection of what's going on in your brain. And so you can clean up your brain, and that helps you clean up all the stuff. And I think the most powerful approach to this is to focus on your intention. And so as a yoga instructor, we always have an intention at the beginning of class. And when we approach our lives intentionally and purposefully, and approach our stuff intentionally and purposefully, you end up in a place that you want to be, rather than just a place that you ended up. And so when I do coaching, I like to coach, as I say, from the feeling line. And I think as you're approaching stuff and what you want to do about stuff, and also feelings and emotions that you have, you want to be really intentional about how you want to feel in life. And so my thoughts about that are, I want to feel calm, content, clear, and connected. And I would love to hear from other folks what you want to feel, because I think if you use that, I like to say you can use your intention as your guiding light in this process, and as your guiding light in the way that you live. And you need a very compelling why if you're going to make these changes and get rid of stuff, which is hard to get rid of, and get rid of thoughts and beliefs that you've held for a long time, and habits that maybe aren't serving you. So when I think about my whys, and I actually posted these in the Facebook page in preparing for this, and one of my whys sort of bumped up to the top with all the wildfires and the smoke, but saving the world is of course a why, and caring for our earth is of course a why of minimalism. And it's one that's actually very powerful for me in terms of, not buying more stuff and not accumulating more stuff. And being very thoughtful about the stuff that you want to have in your life and what you want to do with it. So the other pieces of my whys are creating room to breathe. And I often talk about breathing, and physicians in particular, and that we often hold our breath. So being thoughtful about whether you have room to breathe in your spaces. Do you have room to breathe in your house? Do you have room to breathe in your office? Do you have room to breathe in your relationships? And if you don't, how can you create more room to breathe? And so perhaps by getting rid of the things that don't serve you can be a helpful way to create more room to breathe. And then room to be. We're often so busy doing and cleaning and organizing all that stuff that we don't have room to be and to just relax and to just exist. And so when you create a space that has room to breathe and room to be, it feels very different. And for those of you that practice mindfulness, which I hope are a lot of you since you're part of the Mindful Healthcare Collective, or learning to, it's that same idea in mindfulness when you're in stillness that you're creating space in your brain for your brain to settle like a snow globe and to organize itself and to come up with new creative thoughts and create the space for the dreams and the things that you want in your life. And creating physical space around you and emotional space by getting rid of all the, I like to call it drama, can do the same thing. So the other reason is, of course, when you have less stuff, you have more time, you have more energy, and you have more money to spend on the stuff that you want. And so to me, that's also powerful. As you know, physicians and many of us are parents and just busy people in the world. We don't have much time. So creating more time is really powerful. And one other piece of this minimalism is looking not just at the stuff around you, but the stuff in your life. And I think COVID has really changed our perception of that. We used to have tons of activities and places to go, and we all needed to do all these things. And now we do, I don't know, I probably do 1/10 of them and have a lot more time. And so it's sort of like, which are the ones that you want to bring back later? And it's the perfect opportunity to stay minimalist as life changes and choose very intentionally what serves you and what you want to bring back in your life. And you can change them at different times. There's a minimalist approach that's like, when you buy something new, you have to get rid of something. And so I encourage you to think about that as you're looking at your activities and what kinds of things you're participating in the world. And constraint is a powerful tool to bring you more peace and more space and more mindfulness. So strategies for letting go, because letting go is usually the stumbling block. I would love to hear for people what your biggest stumbling block in being minimalist is. Is it letting go? Is it scarcity mindset? Is it reaccumulation, which is probably my biggest challenge? I'm really good at getting rid of stuff, but then I immediately want to go buy something to fill the void. And so what is it that's your struggle? And you can either, you can put it in the chat box, because I think we'll find a lot of shared themes. Or if you want to unmute yourself and share, you can also do that to make it a little more interactive, whatever appeals to you. So for me, letting go is actually pretty easy, but I know it's one of my strong suits. And in fact, my children say that if it's not locked down, I will throw it out. And that's just been my approach. And so they actually like to hold on to things because I probably get too excited about that. But I know that for many people, letting go is a challenge. And what I have found is I have much more trouble letting go emotionally and letting go of maybe who I was and attachments to the way things used to be. So maybe when your kids were little, you're really attached to that. And so you don't want to let go of that idea. Or in order to become sort of a new, more free person, you have to change your identity. And so you do have to let go of that. And for me, that's actually part of it. And so people are saying scarcity, certainly, I will need it later, emotional attachments, memories, books, people who, let's see, scarcity, learning from parents who grew up poor in the Depression, and always that thought that you might need it someday. That I think, or the clothes that might fit later, being prepared. And I think that that's very, very common. People want to hang on to things if they might need it. So I encourage you to think about what's the cost of hanging on to that stuff, because it has a cost. Hanging on to it for a rainy day is one thought, but what's the cost of having it in your space? And what's the weight of having it in your life? And if you have it and you're not using it, are you wasting it? So in my mind, if you have it and you don't use it, you're still wasting it. And so what's the purpose of having it? So there's a saying, which is, it is not any more wasteful to let it go than to keep it. If you're not using it, you are wasting it. And just because you keep it doesn't mean you're using it. The other thought that I find really helpful when I'm thinking about getting rid of stuff is this idea, and this was very popular thought last time, was this idea that your relationship with something can be complete. So you had a relationship with it, your grandmother gave it to you, it was a special thing, but now it's sitting in a box, and hanging on to it is not serving your grandmother, it's not serving you. And so is your relationship with something complete? And I think we often, when we have stuff we're not using, we don't think about that. And we don't think about the cost of keeping it. But could it be complete? Is there something that you just don't need anymore? And there's a cost to taking up that space, right? There isn't space to be. There isn't space to breathe. And you then have to clean it and organize it and do all of the things. And if organizing worked, your house would stay organized and it would be perfect, but it hasn't worked, obviously, if you're here and you're interested. So I think just noticing that. And some people are saying the mindset, the stuff is expensive. It's expensive to buy, but it's also expensive emotionally and physically to have. And so just thinking about that and deciding, it is just stuff, and yet the stuff has an impact on you. So noticing the impact of all of the stuff, and noticing, a lot of people notice when they go to a hotel room that's all clean and calm, that they sleep better and they relax better and they focus better. And so why wouldn't you want to bring that into your own space? Do people have thoughts on that? So another thought to share is just this idea, stuff is neutral. It's just stuff, okay? We keep it because of how it makes us feel. And keeping all the good stuff does not add up, doesn't make it great stuff. It's just still too much stuff. Does that resonate? I know for folks who look around and feel like there's stuff everywhere, stuff really truly is neutral. Oh yeah. And Tinsley, let's talk about that. Tinsley's asking about navigating with a spouse that doesn't embrace a minimalist mindset. And we talked about this last time. And of course we can only, Tinsley is also a coach, so we can only control ourselves, and your husband's completely out of your control. But it's whether you want to set boundaries about it or deciding what's most important for both of you. And I really do think that it is about space, and no, you can't impact their space, but you can impact your space, and shared space is shared space. So making conscious decisions about what works for everybody can be a really good strategy. So a couple of thoughts on getting rid of stuff. Being aware of this stuff, and you're aware of your thoughts about the stuff, and aware of your limiting beliefs about the stuff. So I don't know what to do with it all. I don't know how to get rid of it. I don't know where to start. It's just too much stuff. All of that gets you stuck. And so flipping your mindset around to, what do I want to keep? Or how can I honor my grandmother without keeping this thing, can be very helpful. And being intentional, again, for me, it's going back to how you want to feel is the most powerful thing. If you want to feel calm and clear and relaxed and at ease, you can't be in a room with tons of stuff. So just deciding how you want to feel and what surroundings will make you feel that way, I think is the most powerful. And then what I like to call mindful decision making. You're making a decision to keep it if you keep it. We often don't think of it as a decision. It's just there. But realize that no matter what you do with it, you're making a decision. Many of us feel like we can't make a decision about what to do with grandma's blanket. But you're all doctors. And so I know you're good at making decisions about other people. So you're making a conscious decision. So own your decision either way. The decision to keep it sitting there collecting dust, and I'm not picking on grandma, but on a chair, or to get rid of it and make space for something that it brings meaning and purpose to your life. So the idea is to keep things that you really love right now, not things you used to love. And things you really use right now, but not things that you used to use. Because the space itself that you create by getting rid of the things that you used to use can be used for something that you want now, something that you love now. And you can enjoy it if you create space for it. And then from mindfulness, it's this non-judgment. So we have a lot of judgment about the stuff we have. We have a lot of judgment about waste. A lot of people mentioned that in the chat box as well. And a lot of judgments about whether it was valuable and how much money you spent on it when you got it and what it would mean to get rid of it. And what if you never used it? What do you get rid of it? But again, counter that with the cost of having it, the cost of keeping it, the cost of it taking up space in your life, and the churn of thinking about it. And so that that reading about the thoughts and the buzz, there's like churn from having this stuff. There's churn about thinking about all the things, and that has a cost of energy and time. And when we come to mindfulness, we try to let everything settle and relax and have space. And so minimalism is an approach to doing that in your life with all of your things as well. So the last thing, and then I thought we'd get to some coaching, is just this idea on refilling stuff. And for the most part, if you don't buy stuff, you don't have to let go of it. And so I like to think of it as letting go of things in advance by not buying it. And if you don't want to have to deal with letting go of it, you don't need it. And so being really conscious about how great the space feels when you have it, once you've cleared out, and then not buying this stuff can save you a lot of heartache because you don't have to get rid of it. And then this idea of wanting what you have. And so feeling abundance from what you have rather than what you don't have. And so we have this sort of compare-itis all the time, and I need this and I don't have this and I don't have this. And so you can focus on what you do have and wanting what you have. You can engender that sense of abundance and presence with the things that you have. And that can really change things. And the last thought is that getting back to this idea of what's in your mind is reflected in your stuff. And so if you don't do the mind work and you are not mindful and you're busy churning and unconsciously moving through life, you will continue to accumulate stuff. And for most of us, as going through medical training and being busy and having busy lives and working in healthcare, we have been overwhelmed. And that's why we have so much stuff. And we just bought stuff to sort of address things along the way. We often buy stuff as a form of buffering. So if we feel bad or feel guilty, and that's where getting rid of all of those thoughts that you don't have, where you had a bad day and you need a reward of shoes or ice cream or whatever it might be, and that stays with you. And so realizing that the stuff is not the solution to the emotion, but getting rid of it. And so if you can clean up your brain and organize your thoughts and get rid of all of those heavy emotions that I mentioned. So, being unhappy, living in fear, regretting the past, worrying, comparing, being a victim, all of those things lead to stuff. And so if you can do that mind work to realize that you're enough as it is and have compassion for yourself. And this is something that we talk about in this group a lot. We've done a lot of sessions on liking ourselves and loving ourselves and having compassion and being present with what is and not trying to fix it, which is our doctor healthcare mentality. Then you can be much more comfortable with the less stuff and not refill that pile of stuff. So I would love to, let me just check the chat. And I would love if somebody wants to ask questions or talk about what they're struggling with, getting rid of things or not buying things or struggles in mindfulness. That would be great. And someone was just saying that cleaning out one thing can feel so good. And so just start in one space and notice how you feel. And in coaching, we talk very much about all of our actions in life are driven by how we feel. So if you can start to notice, oh, that feels really good, you'll be driven to do more things because it feels good. That's actually why we shop and do all this buffering, because it feels good temporarily, but then you have all the stuff that doesn't feel good. And so trying to connect to the feeling good without having this stuff can be really powerful. So I'm just scanning through the chat box. Does anybody want to unmute themselves and get some coaching on this, on the stuff, whether it's physical stuff, emotional stuff?
I have a comment.
Yeah.
I don't, the book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying?
Yeah.
Like, that book was so amazing to me because one of the things that I struggled with was, this is still functional. Like, this is not total tatters. And even if it is, I have also a sense of like, I don't want to throw anything away. Like sometimes to an extreme, like I don't want to pollute the earth. You know, I want like, I can use the backside of this piece of paper. Do you have like a ream of 500 sheets? Yes, I do. But I'm going to use like, I'm going to take this piece of paper, I'm going to rip it in half, and I'm going to use the backside, and, you know, just like that sort of stuff. And like reading that book when she was talking about, okay, well, think about what purpose this has served. You know, has it served its purpose? Like cards. And I haven't actually been able to do any of these things, but when I read them, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. You know, like the card's purpose was to say happy birthday on whatever day that was and like show you your love that day. So that love doesn't just go away if you don't have the card, but the card, you know, takes up space, and not that cards are thick or anything, but it was, you know, like applicable to lots of things. Like, has this served its purpose? And
well, and I love the idea of waste, right? Because if you just have it sitting somewhere, then it's being wasted where it is. And so you're wasting it either way, if you want to think about it that way. And there's a physician coach who works on weight loss, and she has this concept of waste because a lot of people struggle with wasting food and that they need to finish eating it. And the idea is, are you going to waste it on your body or waste it in the trash? Because if you're eating something you don't need, you're wasting it on your body. And that actually really helped me with this mindfulness idea, right? Because I'm wasting it in the space in my closet when I can't find things quickly. And I'm, you know, got stuff falling out every time I try to open. Like if my Tupperware cupboard is too full and it all falls on the floor, then I'm wasting time by having it. And so the thought is, could someone else use it? And there's a lot of, you know, buy nothing groups or things like that. And what is the cost again of not getting rid of it? Because we underestimate that there's waste in our lives from having this stuff, and wasted energy and wasted time. And when I got rid of half of my closet, it's so easy to get dressed and so easy to do laundry and so easy, you know, so this idea that all of a sudden there's so much to be gained from not having it. And you already have this stuff. So keeping it, you're wasting it if you throw it out and replace it. But you're not wasting it if you get rid of stuff and either give it to someone else. So several people mentioned this idea of throwing it in the landfill. So it's only true if you're going to keep using it. And so if you're using it and it has a purpose, then keep the stuff. But if you've got the thing in your closet that doesn't fit you and might never fit you and is just taking up space, then that has a cost. And so again, can your relationship with that card is complete. It said happy birthday. You can also, for some things, take a picture of it, then you have it. Or think about why your grandmother gave you this thing and take a moment and honor that. That's actually a bigger honor, I can't quite think of the word, than keeping the card tucked in a drawer for 25 years. If that makes sense. How can you honor that person? And I know I mentioned this in some of the relationship sessions, and it's one of my favorite things, which is, what would love do? You know, would love, if someone gave you something that doesn't fit anymore and you can't put it on, it's like, what would love do with that? Would they keep it in your closet, or would they move it on so you can have a few things that fit that you feel great in, rather than looking at it and feeling like you should lose more weight to be able to put it on?
I think another thing, she also had a little TV series that I watched. And I think that another thing that I have struggled with is like knowing what I want and what I like. You know, she talks about like what sparks joy, and just if you've been living your life people pleasing other people, you don't even really know what you want. And so if you're trying to see like, okay, well, what do I want? And you haven't really ever gone through life just going after what you want, then it's like, you know, you live in this kind of yellow zone, but you just want to keep whatever sparks the green light or whatever. And so I think that, and the way she has it laid out. She's like, you know, the stuff that is the easiest to process, which is clothing, you start with, and then you kind of like build that up. So I thought that was
Well, and
interesting.
I wonder, it's partly joy. To me, it's like if it serves a purpose. So some things that we have, like the things in my kitchen drawers, don't necessarily spark joy, but they might serve a purpose. And I like to think about the emotional baggage you carry with you. So that grudge does that, like that actually usually suffering with that causes you to shop more and causes you, you know, to want other things to feel better. So the idea is, does it serve you and can you get rid of it? And that can make a big difference in how you approach collecting more things or getting rid of more things. If that makes sense.
I have a
Anyone?
problem with swapping things out. In other words, like, you know, I'm motivated right now to clean a few areas of my home and declutter because we're getting ready to welcome a new puppy into our house. I lost my dog a few months ago, and I realized when I became so heartbroken that so many of these things don't matter, that, you know, people and the people and the animals and all your friends that you love are really what's most important. But the swapping part, now that I have to declutter, I feel like I'm throwing a lot of things out, and I do realize that it's very freeing, but there's some things I'm moving to another area, to another room. And I'm trying to break that from, and I'm calling it like swapping because I'm swapping it from one room to another.
So you're just moving it. You're not actually letting it go.
Well, I am throwing a lot out, but there are things that I have the same thing that you had, the other physician said, that, you know, you pick what you love and what brings you joy and you can throw the other things out. You know, I watch those videos also, and I've done the same thing. So I've thrown a lot out and it's very freeing. But when I run out of time, I feel like I'm moving.
Mm-hmm. Well, and part of it is it's a journey. So you don't have to do it all in one day. And so maybe just moving it, if you have a new puppy coming in and you can't deal with, you know, you just close the door and then you can get to that part. Because it's also like peeling an onion, right? You get rid of the easy stuff, the clothes and the books maybe, or whatever it is that is the least emotionally attached. And then it's like the photos are much harder and the gifts are much harder. And so you can start by creating the space and realizing how freeing it is. And then it's like, wow, I want to get rid of more stuff. I want to get rid of more stuff. Miriam doesn't want to get rid of her books. And, you know, for some people, the books are the thing that's the hardest to get rid of. Everyone has a different thing that is more difficult. And so you just know what your thing is. And that's why I mentioned at the beginning, it's very much a personal thing. So we all have, it's not about having no stuff. It's having the stuff that's authentically you, and that's what I think Marie Kondo gets at, right? It's the stuff that you love. And that's the mindful piece, exploring who you are and who you want to be. So often a lot of the stuff that you have is someone that you don't want to be anymore, or was the old you. And so who do you want to be, and what stuff do you want in your life? And how do you want your environment and the way you show up in the world to reflect who you are? And I know for many physicians who I coach, there's a big dichotomy between stuff we want and stuff we think we should want also. And so sometimes figuring out who you actually are is the challenging piece, and sitting with, you know, who am I authentically? And for Miriam, I was thinking she wants the books, right? She needs the books. That's authentically her. And that's, you know, some people want that, but they don't need many clothes. And figure out who you are authentically and decide and just keep the stuff that's really you. And so everything that you have should have a purpose and should feel good to have. And not, you know, if it doesn't have a purpose, you're not using it, it's broken, it's, you know, you don't need it. And so how can you honor, you know, we often think of certain things as, you know, they came from this person. How can you honor that person without the thing? Or if they're no longer with you, like what would honor them most? Is keeping it going to honor them? What will happen when you're not here with all that stuff? So really figuring out who you are and connecting with that can be really, really powerful. And I see Marie mentioning like out of sight, out of mind. And what I would offer is it might be out of sight, but it's still in your energetic space. So, you know, I'm someone who does sort of the yoga, like you could put it in your garage, for example, but if that garage is a space where everything is just sort of falling over, what it means is you still have a part of your life that you haven't addressed, and it just is tucked in the garage, but it's also still a part of you. And I think when people realize they've gotten rid of so much of the stuff, that's where that freedom comes from. And so your body still knows it's in the garage or in the pantry or in the wherever. And so it can be part of the journey, but realize that it's the letting go. And that's where this spaciousness comes. And with intention, if you want spaciousness, you have to create it. So you can't become someone new unless you let go of who you were. And that includes the way you think and your physical environs.
Thanks. I just wanted to say that was actually in response to the digital clutter comment.
Oh, yeah. No worries.
Because I keep all my books on Kindle, but I wasn't even thinking about all the stuff that we have shoved in all sorts of places. My husband and I are very, very good at stashing things away and making the best use of all the space that we have. So we can make everything look like things are in order for whenever we have guests. But you're absolutely right with the just things in places that we do need to just clean out.
Well, and think about your mind in that way, right? Because we tuck things in our mind. And then when you do coaching, they pop out of your mind. It's like, oh yeah, I shoved that way back there. I wasn't going to deal with it. It's the same as your stuff, like tucked in the corner or in the closet, and you open it and it all falls out, right? So it's a similar.
That explains a lot.
It's very, very intertwined. And the digital clutter is a challenge, right? Because you don't see it. And so, to me, it's a bit more of a struggle. That makes me think more of like activities. And so where you're going to spend your time, because the digital clutter can kind of disappear, because it's out in space. So it's kind of like a time expenditure to me. And if you have it in such a way that, so I'm thinking of, say, Facebook, or, if you're scanning through all the stuff and you're turning around, then that's not a very mindful way to approach it. So approaching the time you spend with the digital clutter in a calm way, or not saving everything for a rainy day. And oftentimes, if you need something new, someone mentioned their teens and stuff, young adults moving out, and I had been saving stuff too. And then what I discovered is they just want their own stuff anyway. Nobody actually wants your old stuff. And so, save the things that are really good or special or meaningful in some way if you think they'll really want it. But I thought that my children would want everything, and it's not actually true. They don't want your stuff. They want their own stuff. And generally, just the way our world has evolved, you can get stuff. My kids just get stuff off of Craigslist or other people's stuff, and they're perfectly happy with it, and they don't want my stuff, as it turns out. I'm like, no, this is great. And they're like, why would I want that? And so realizing that their stuff is their journey and your stuff is your journey. And so when we hold stuff for other people, it actually comes with a whole lot of emotional weight, even my salad tongs. And some people are commenting on how the younger generation really is doing a better job of not collecting stuff. And I think it's, a bit societal, and they are much more in tune with some of the green stuff and what the stuff means. And if you think about how we approached our lives, right? Many of us have long-term jobs and long-term houses and and then the next generation is like, no, you just move from here to here and you do this and you just have a small bag. And it does afford them a tremendous amount of freedom that we don't necessarily feel. Like we feel weighted down and it's harder to move. And so what I like to offer is that's a choice. We often don't realize we're making that choice, and choose whether you want that. right? So do you want your house full of stuff that you have to take care of? Or do you want to be able to get up and move? It's all a choice. And so it's the intention. And it doesn't mean that one's better than the other. You can have a lot of stuff. And in my mind, minimalism is also not about not having stuff. It's about having important stuff, stuff that's meaningful to you, stuff that has a purpose and that you enjoy, rather than just the stuff that weighs you down. So if the stuff feels heavy, then that's too much stuff. And you get to choose what to keep and what not to keep.
Okay, so I'll speak again.
Yeah.
So my name's Ilyana, by the way, and I'm Il Luca in Facebook land. But what you were mentioning about, I think you mentioned something about like they don't want your stuff, and when you're gone, they're just gonna throw it away or something. And there's something called the Scandinavian death cleaning as like a method. Like I watched some YouTubes the other day about all this stuff before I knew you were doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, they were comparing like the two methods. Like I'm gonna do the Scandinavian death cleaning versus the Marie Kondo cleaning, and there's just kind of two little thought process about how to pick what you want to keep. And one, the Scandinavian death cleaning was like, okay, when you're gone, who wants your stuff? Like what stuff are people actually maybe going to want? And pre-declutter your house for them so you don't leave them a giant mess to go through.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that that was kind of interesting because my in-laws, they have a lot of stuff and I have a lot of stuff, let's be real. But they are like, when we die, just get rid of all of our stuff, you know? But if people can't process that, they're gonna be like, oh my gosh, like, how can I get rid of all these parts of my family, you know, who aren't here anymore? So you get rid of it for them and then you leave them less to process through. So I thought that was interesting.
So my mother-in-law passed away recently, and she had so much stuff, and she loved it all, but it was really a chore. And so there's really something to that, and realizing the impact of your stuff, not just on you. And this is where I get into the environmental green part, but on the world, right? And so the more stuff we buy, that has an impact. And as we're watching all kinds of crazy things happen to our environment these days, to me, that's also part of the why. And so realizing that, you know, it's actually not just about, you know, using rags instead of paper towels and not having plastic bags, but the more stuff you don't buy and people don't make, that has a huge impact. And so it's not just about getting rid of stuff, but being very conscious and mindful about the stuff that you bring into your life. And I would say it's not just physical stuff, right? The emotional stuff you bring into your life and what you carry with you can also be tremendously weighty. And so it's a chance to just be intentional about who you want to be and what thoughts you want to carry with you and what stuff you want to carry with you and what life you want to live. And so if you have a house filled with stuff, it's harder to live a life that's sort of nomadic and free, right? You have a lot of stuff you have to clean and pay for and take care of and organize and water and feed and all of those things. And so it's being intentional about that. And sometimes we're not intentional about it. And then we have all this stuff. And so then you have to figure out what to do with it. Anyone else have any other comments to share?
Hi. Sorry. Oh, go ahead.
I've already talked, so go ahead.
I'm just thinking I'm pretty much a minimalist. I don't like to hold on to stuff, maybe to an extreme. My house is pretty sparse. I don't have my high school yearbooks anymore. Things that are given to me. When I move, I'm often like, you know what, I enjoyed this for a period of time. It served its purpose. I'm happy to get rid of it and someone else can enjoy it, give it to Goodwill. But one thing that I've held on to, like I don't hold on to cards or anything like that, but jewelry from previous relationships. And a lot of it's, you know, nice jewelry, like diamonds and things like this. But I'm not really even a jewelry person, because I'm such a minimalist. Mm-hmm. And I've thought of like, who do you give that to? You don't give that to Goodwill. I've thought about bringing it to a pawn shop, but that seems so strange. So that, I mean, that's something like going back many, many relationships. I have like a few drawers of expensive, nice jewelry. I don't, what do I do with that? And what does that say about me holding on to that, like of all things?
Well, I was going to ask, like, why are you holding on to it? But it sounds like you're holding on to it from what you just, well, it's interesting because is there something about the relationships? But it's also you're holding on to it because it's valuable, but it's not valuable to you, is
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Right.
So some people turn it into something else that might be valuable. Like maybe, you know, if it's a ring, turn it into a necklace or turn it into something. Or what if you, I'm having like an incredible, yeah. Well, Jana says you can give it to her. You can send it to me too. I love jewelry. But what if you gave it to someone like, you know, totally unsuspecting, or someone like, could you turn it into something really amazing and beautiful? As sort of like a random, I'm just thinking like a random act of kindness, or,
Yeah.
you know, some kind of auction it off as a fundraiser for something you care about, or
Idea.
I'm making up ideas. I have no idea. Or women at a shelter, someone's saying, which would be beautiful. Like if you really don't want it. And the other thing you can do is sometimes people will take out stones and like melt it and turn it into something else.
But even like that seems like for a minute, like
yeah.
I'm such a minimalist. Like I don't even want to be bothered.
Yeah. Well, you're reusing it. That's what I was thinking. But if you don't want to be bothered, it's just like that other stuff. But if it's not valuable to you, right? I think you're tripped up on the value of the jewelry.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea to donate it to like maybe an auction for a
then
shelter.
it can have a whole life of its own.
Yeah.
Could be really cool.
I know that one of my friends, when she's done with some of her stuff, she gives it to her office staff. Like she packages up like little wristlets and stuff with whatever she's done with, and they love it. They don't, you know, they don't feel a way that some people could feel like, you know, she's giving me her leftovers. But you know, she gives it away to people who help make her life easier. So that's an idea for you as well.
And to me, that gets into this idea of intention, right? So the stuff to you doesn't have a purpose, but how can you intentionally use it for good? Or, and gets me back to this idea of like, what would love do? Love would share it with someone in need, or would use it to raise money for something that needs money that you care about, like thinking about it in that way. And so it's not like when we come to these things with negative ideas of, you know, it's stuff, I got to get rid of it, I got to clean it, I have all this stuff. And so then it has this heavy weight, and you can use it to create beauty and to create space. And what would your life be like without all that stuff? People are talking about selling it, but if you don't want to sell it, yeah, someone says they have a nearly new sale at the hospital.
I don't want to sell it because I'm such a minimalist. I have, you know, I have enough money in the bank. Like the money doesn't mean anything to me. But.
So figure out how you can give it to, I mean, just give it to someone who really needs it. Like, wouldn't that be awesome? I don't know
jewelry. Who needs jewelry? No one needs jewelry.
Someone who's had a hard life. It could mean something, like just because it doesn't mean something to you, it could mean something to someone else. So, because you don't need jewelry. It has no value to you.
I mean, not this jewelry from prior relationships now.
Right. So who would it have value? Or does it have value just to sell it and donate the money? You could do that too.
Yeah.
Or just let someone else sell it. I let my children sell things for me, and then they get to keep the money, and they need it because, you know, they're young adults who are trying to, you know, I'm like, if you can sell it, that's great. You keep the money, because then I get it out of my house and they are inspired to do the work for me. So, but if you don't have one of those, then figure out, like, maybe an auction would be a great idea. And I think that's the purpose of like stuff is just stuff. And so figuring out how you can use it for good. Does it have a purpose? If it doesn't have a purpose for you, could it have a purpose for someone else? And then I love to, when you find yourself with a lot of stuff, that like your relationship with that jewelry is complete. So you're ready to get rid of it, it sounds like. You just don't know what to do with it.
Right.
And so that involves the creative thinking. But when you have a lot of things where your relationship is complete, it's like, do I want to bring in more things? Or should I be more watchful about bringing in more things? So I thought I would end with just another kind of mindful reflection. And if anyone else has anything they urgently want to share, we can do that. Repurposing stuff. Let me just check. Yeah, well, I think, there's lots of places you can give your stuff that does repurpose it, or find a place that you feel good about, a shelter, or a lot of hospitals will give away clothes in the ER, things like that. And so being creative about it. And a number of people are mentioning something called Buy Nothing, where people post and you can just get stuff and give away stuff, and people will come to your house and pick it up. In San Francisco, we have a thing where literally people just leave it on the curb and other people come take it, and it's just a thing, and it pretty much disappears within 24 hours. And so I don't know where it goes, but so I think just being creative about it and realizing that if it doesn't serve you, someone else might want it. But we often say, well, I can't give it here. I can't give it here. Like, if it's not serving you, just get rid of it. And someone else, hopefully it will end up, it doesn't necessarily end up in the landfill unless you put it in your trash. And use it as incentive to not buy more stuff. So, and it sounds like for this group, maybe getting rid of stuff is the harder part. Or not knowing how to get rid of it, like wanting to get rid of it, but not knowing how to get rid of it, rather than feeling attached to the stuff. But again, I would get to the cost of the space. And if you have no space in your life, no space to breathe, and no space to think, and no space to create, and to just be, that has a cost as well. So the reflection I wanted to offer at the end is just a mindful reflection on space itself. And this idea that space has a purpose. Could you allow empty shelves and allow open closets and make room for air, make room to breathe, make room for what you want? Space creates clarity. New, fresh ideas come from space. And space makes room for dreams and possibilities. So I invite you to just close your eyes for a moment and take a deep breath in through your nose and a huge out breath. Another deep breath in through your nose and an out breath. And bring your hands to heart center. And for a moment, connect with your intention. Your intention for living a conscious life. Being mindful of who you are and what you carry with you, whether it's emotional or physical, and how that impacts you and everyone around you. And what might your life be like if you created more space, more room to breathe, more room to be, and more room for possibilities? You can bring your hands back to your thighs and open your eyes. I hope you all have a beautiful night and have fun getting rid of the things that no longer serve you.